Hey everybody, and welcome back to sweptmedia here at the convergence of AI and Web3. We're going to be talking about the Web3 side of responsible AI today. Last time we went over what the Web2 side of the world, of the tech world, the Googles and Microsofts, the OECDs and the US governments, and a few other things there in between think about responsible AI. And responsible AI being, of course, this way of thinking about how teams should be building AI technology and how they should be implementing it across different solutions. And maybe more importantly, how the end user should be implementing it. So, how might a merchant be using Google solutions or Google Cloud's AI solutions to make their lives easier? There's a lot of talk about this. There's a lot of emphasis on responsible AI. That's a proper noun, that's a capitalized thing, responsible AI. A lot of emphasis on that from the big incumbent mainstream players in the tech world. I mean, a tremendous amount. They talk about it a lot. Now, on the other side, on the Web3 side of things, I don't see anybody talking about it at all. I don't think that people really think about it. It wasn't until I started digging into this that I even realized that it was a thing because I'm so entrenched on the Web3 side of the world that I didn't know that it was a thing. And so, what does that mean? Well, it means, for one thing, that Web3 builders aren't thinking about it at all. If they are, then they are the exception. The ones that are thinking about it are the exception. Another thing it tells me is that if the incumbents are the incumbents, if the hyperscalers, which have basically unlimited money, can go out and make deals with nuclear power plants to power their data centers that they're building from scratch, so that they can continue to capture market share and, of course, gain dominance in the AI space. And that means that they are not going to relinquish any power. It also means that if Web3 solutions are going to, in some way, maybe not outright take market share from them, but maybe join forces with them and make them better, because isn't that what Web3 is all about? Not necessarily taking over, but enhancing what's already there. That's why it's Web3 and not Web0, right? If that's going to happen, then Web3 builders are going to have to reckon with responsible AI in one way or another. How they would do that, I don't know. I've done a couple of interviews now with people who might have the right answer to that, but I don't have the right answer. I just know that they will need to do it in one way or another. Why? Because they are in the business of making money. Your protocols and your networks that are supporting AI technology in one way or another, whether they be through just data, siloed data, or IP and governance of the IP in regards to how it can be owned and rented out, or how people are building their AI agents, how teams are building AI agents, and what protocols they're doing that on. All of that needs money to stay afloat. Okay, they need to have revenue. They need to generate revenue. It's not going to be they announce another $50 million investment every single year. It just can't be like that. Data is very, very expensive, and they need to pay for it with revenue. So if they're going to, again, have a long lasting business plan and be around for a long time, the Web3 solutions, they're going to need to come to terms with some form of responsible AI. How? I don't know. But what we can do is look at the playing field now. Let's look at what some leading or up and coming Web3 based AI projects are thinking in their core construction, their frameworks of how they're built, who they're built for, what they're built for, and why they exist. And you will see that they don't mention responsible AI once. There might be vague elements of responsible AI glittered throughout some of these frameworks from Near, from Sahara AI, Story Protocol, and Bittensor. They are not concerned about responsible AI. They don't care about social equity. They don't care about social equality. They don't care about civil liberties or any of those things. They do not matter. DEI, not a factor in their bills. Maybe in the offices where these things are built, maybe at, for example, a Near office, the people who work there are concerned about that. I honestly have no idea. Maybe they are. But one thing that Web3 so far has been good about, or maybe not good isn't the right word to use. Maybe what has been displayed by so many of them is that if those things are happening, if there is something like a concern over social equity or DEI or what some people might call woke values are shared by the people who work at those Web3 projects, it doesn't show on the outside because they have decided to bifurcate their focuses. Okay, at Near, we focus on building technology for everyone. Maybe when they go home, they can think about all the other social problems that they want to solve, and that's their prerogative. They can absolutely do that. But for whatever reason, it doesn't bleed over into the product. So again, this is just speculation. I don't know what is actually happening. So let's go over what exactly these Web3 AI projects are thinking about when they are being constructed, when they've been conceived. So we'll start with the shared problems that it seems like these Web3 projects are trying to target from the centralized space, maybe specifically from centralized AI. So what do they see are the problems at something like a hyperscaler like Google Cloud or Microsoft that they're trying to solve? Well, one thing I think is apparent is they're trying to solve monopolization and the stifling of innovation from many upstarts. Microsoft has a tendency to, when they see an upstart coming, they will put a team together to quickly figure out what makes that upstart work, what makes it valuable, and then they will crush it. Usually through very aggressive competition. They'll build something that puts it out of business entirely. And then monopolization, of course, Google has an issue with that. Maybe not on the AI side, but I mean, if it's happening in their smartphone software, then it's going to bleed over into other aspects of their operations. Next, a lack of fairness and equity, which is interesting. They are not talking about fairness and equity from a social standpoint. It's that they're saying centralized platforms lead deepening economic disparities. It's the economic side of things and restricted access to resources. So these are aspects that are shared specifically by Sahara AI and Bittensor. They see that these hyperscalers and the mainstream tech industry are gatekeeping to an extent who can and cannot innovate. Next, there's privacy concerns and data control. We know about how many data leaks there have been, and there are sure to be more from centralized entities. Lack of liquidity for the IPs that are being published, and that's probably something that Story Protocol would be focusing on a lot. And then, of course, inadequate compensation for creators. That's something that many protocols are trying to fix right now. Being compensated for your work so that it isn't just stolen outright, that people are paying you to rent it if they want to do that. It's a very important thing, and it's something that Story attempts to do. Whether they're doing it well or not, I don't know. I do know that they earn about $28 a day in revenue, which tells me that they're not doing something right. But that's beside the point. I think we can have a different video about about Story Protocol as an L1 later on. So some things that these decentralized Web3 AI protocols share as goals for themselves, not necessarily in the context of against the Web2 space, more necessarily in the context of what exactly they are trying to achieve themselves. Democratization of AI, that's something that Sahara AI is doing well, and actually OpenLedger is working on that as well. When OpenLedger goes to mainnet, I'm sure that that's something that they will be working very, very hard to make happen, democratization of AI. Fair compensation and attribution, of course, same thing with the IPs, and I think Bittensor is working on that as well. Open innovation and collaboration, along with user sovereignty and data control, that is near absolutely user sovereignty and data control. Zero G as well to an extent, but again, that's not in mainnet yet. If we look at the core concepts and mechanisms of these 4 projects that I've decided to focus on for this little exercise, it will give us a much greater understanding of how much they differ from the Web2 space, from the mainstays. So for example, Bittensor and Story Foundation or Story Protocol, they tend to be focused on peer-to-peer intelligence markets. Bittensor proposes a market where intelligence is priced by other intelligence systems peer-to-peer across the internet. That's something that they talk about in their framework, in their white paper. And models are ranked for informational production regardless of the subjective task or dataset used to train them. Then Story Foundation talks about creating a programmable market for knowledge and creativity very lofty idea here. Again, peer-to-peer intelligence markets next, AI assets and intellectual property, that's IP management. Sahara AI and of course Story again are talking about those things. Sahara says that they're introducing AI assets, a novel framework that establishes clear ownership and management protocols for private AI resources, including personal data and proprietary models. That's what Sahara is doing. I talked to someone from Sahara a few months ago, if you'll remember. He said essentially, in a nutshell, Sahara is making a marketplace for your data and for your work being what a developer does, a script or some kind of program. It might even be a whole protocol that you can sell sell access to on Sahara AI. Next would be decentralized infrastructure and consensus. That's very much Near protocol. Near is one of the special ones that they're run pretty well, but in regard to this concept of decentralized infrastructure, what Near is looking at is several different aspects. So sharding, they take a sharding approach, which what they say allows the network to increase its capacity as additional nodes participate. And just a couple months ago, they said they wanted to have 1 million TPS. Everyone talks about TPS, but this is actually an important thing for something like Near, which would need to be able to scale up to something like that if there's going to be as many agents as they want to have running on there. That's a lot of calls, a lot of pings every single second from an AI agent. Then they have Nightshade Consensus, which lets all of the shards combine together to produce a single block. So rather than putting all the shards in different blocks, again, the sharding is the scaling, helps the network scale and make additional nodes participate. The Nightshade Consensus makes all of those shards work or be put onto a single block, so it doesn't clog up the network. Then it talks about hidden validators and fishermen. I don't want to get too much into what Near is all about, but essentially hidden validators are similar committees for each shard, and fishermen are observing nodes that permissionlessly detect and report bad behavior. So that's an aspect of incentivization, making sure that the incentives are properly aligned on Near. Then if we look at the economic models, and again, the thing that sets apart Web3 from Web2 in this case is that they have very clear economic model setup and incentivization. Maybe that is the best thing about Web3 technology, that there's this inherent incentivization model that is better than probably anything we've seen before. People are now, look at Story, look at Sahara, you can easily set up properly aligned incentives with Web3 technology that you cannot do in Web2. So in regard to economic models and incentives on Near, they are used for processing transactions and storing data, running a validator node, and participating in governance processes. All of those things yield rewards for you. They give contract rewards. That's a portion of the fees generated, again, on Near, and I think Story Protocol does that too if you run a validator. Inflation, talking about Sahara's collaborative economy, which they say is designed to enable monetization and attribution, ensuring that all participants are rewarded for their contributions. Then receipts and licenses, dual growth flywheel, their tokens themselves are part of the economic model. Every one of them has a token. Sahara, I think it's called Sahara. Bittensor is Tau, Near is Near, and Story is IP. Good branding there. Those are all part of the economic model. Now, where Web3 might fall astray here is that the foundations that are running the businesses of these Web3 projects might think that the token itself is the business model. That as long as we keep the token price high, the business is running well. That is not quite accurate, but I know that is the prevailing logic in Web3 these days. So aside from maybe the token side of things, because the token isn't necessarily like a utility for the project as much as it is a life raft in many cases. But in other aspects, the economics of these Web3 projects is vastly superior. And next, they talk about usability and accessibility. And this is probably where the responsible AI part is most intertwined, even though it's very, very vaguely intertwined into Web3, where you can draw the most clear line from responsible AI to Web3 is in this aspect of usability and accessibility. That how these Web3 projects are enhancing usability and accessibility for their technology is how they are, in a way, inadvertently satisfying some aspect of responsible AI frameworks that I've read about. So Near Protocol prioritizes usability first. That's what they say. That's end user usability and developer usability. They want to make it as easy for you and I who don't know how to write code to use whatever is on Near as easily as possible. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, staking on Near is very easy. Setting up a wallet is very easy. It's one of the easiest out of all the L1s that I've done staking for. It's one of the easiest, if not the easiest. So that is true. They have definitely done that. Then Sahara emphasizes AI utility. That's an interesting aspect as a foundational pillar, ensuring a seamless AI user experience. And they say that on their light paper, it says they provide an out-of-the-box experience for all participants, regardless of technical expertise. So there is your equality aspect of Web3 AI. Sahara also offers Sahara toolkits with SDKs and APIs for technical users and no-code, low-code toolkits for you and I. Then Bittensor aims to create a market where researchers, and this is from their white paper, where researchers can directly monetize machine intelligence work and consumers can directly purchase it. So the big thing about these Web3 AI projects isn't about who should have access to it or who should benefit from it. It's more about everyone can have access to it and everyone can benefit from it if they want to. It doesn't matter who you are. No, nobody is lesser and no one is oppressed. Nobody has an advantage here. Everyone is starting from zero and it's up to you to take advantage of it. That's, again, that edge that Web3 projects tend to have, where the incentivization part of it is that major edge, where if you have a laptop and an internet connection, you can just go online and contribute as much content or whatever valuable thing that you have to contribute to the project that you can, and you'll be compensated for it, and maybe compensated tremendously. Look at all the airdrops too that have happened over the years. So in the future, what these projects are looking to do, like for example with Story, they say they believe a universal IP repository and a programmable market for intelligence could mark the start of a new renaissance. Again, very lofty goals here. I don't want to talk too much about Story. You can just read my X feed to figure out more about what I think about that. And they say they aim to be an IP layer for the entire internet, regardless of the execution environment. Again, accessibility. That accessibility part of it is so much better than what we see in the Web 2 space. They're so caught up in who and what should have access and should not have access to their resources that they forgot that they could be making much better solutions that everyone wants. Then Bittensor says that they collectively run intelligence markets that continually produce newly trained models and pay contributors who create information theoretic value. And in turn, that enables smaller, diverse systems that can find niches within a much higher resolution reward landscape. Again, accessibility to the rewards, accessibility to the technology itself is most important. And in the case of something like a Story protocol, you can have access to it, but that doesn't mean you're going to earn rewards. If your IP is not good enough to generate demand, or rather if your marketing is not good enough for your IP to generate demand, you probably aren't going to earn rewards. If you are building something with Near, if you're building an AI agent with Near, it's not Near's fault that no one's using your AI agent. It's most likely your fault because they're giving you access to everything they have. You should probably figure out what works best with Near in regard to its limitations as a protocol. But aside from that, if you built something well within the limitations of Near and no one wants it, then that's on you. That's not on Near. Which is kind of the opposite of something like a hyperscaler. You know, Google Cloud is going to charge you minimum $6,000 a month right off the bat. They won't give you anything. You need to pay $6,000 a month directly to them just to get started with like a basic amount of data. Okay, that's not going to happen necessarily with Near. And another thing I should add about the hyperscalers is they'll give you developers to work with and they will give you frameworks to build on. But again, those are add-ons. You will pay for them. With an open source, these open source decentralized solutions, you have access to them right out of the box. Whatever idea you have that you want to build, you can use a Web3 application, Web3 based solution to build it. Now, as for the other overheads that you might have to pay for example, data, you will pay for it. But they won't gatekeep how you use your data and who you can build with and what language you want to build on. So next, the challenges that Bittensor is finding is that, so that's essentially Web3. Okay, they don't care about responsible AI. And maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe responsible AI is a major concern for these projects as well. And that is why they don't talk about it. That rather than talking about it, they just build around it, around the principles that responsible AI frameworks talk about. Because by building around it, they don't have to deal with those bottlenecks anymore. Rather than gatekeeping and then trying to figure out how to open the gate step by step to make sure more people have access, the gate is just open. If you want to use it, come and use it. That might be the solution that these Web3 builders have taken. I don't know. I don't fully understand it yet. But like I said, I've got some interviews coming up that should clear up those questions that I have and maybe questions that you have about exactly how Web3 is going to stay competitive, or rather, more importantly, how Web3 AI is going to stay more competitive in this very competitive landscape over the course of the next 5 years, 10 years. I don't know. We'll see. Catch you next time.